Hello, everybody. We're live. It's working. Um, let's. This month is Men's Health Awareness Month, so we thought we might talk a little bit about our experiences with male clients, how that might differ from some of our female clients. What kind of questions do we ask our male clients? And just overall perspectives and thoughts on the issue. If you guys are in the chat, please feel free to say hi so we know that you're watching and ask any questions you want to. We'll have somebody watching the chat, I assume, to see your questions, and we'll try to answer those as well. Why don't we go around the room? I'll start and introduce ourselves real quick, and then we'll get on the topic. Hi, I'm Benjamin. I am licensed professional counselor here at Chosen, and work with all sorts of folks, marriage, anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. And I do all virtual sessions here at Chosen as well.
Hello, my name is Jill Chastain, and I am a licensed professional therapist. And then I'm also certified in whole food plant-based nutrition. And I work with a variety of clients and also work with a population of men clients as well. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
And I'm Laurel Huff. I'm a licensed professional counselor. And yeah, I have a few men clients on my caseload, and it's building gradually.
Mhm, mhm.
And I am Dr. Leah Church Brooks, licensed psychologist. I'm here at Chosen. And the reason that we decided to jump into this topic today, in addition to it being Men's Mental Health Month, is because there's still this disparity between men seeking therapy. So overall, the number of people who are seeking mental health services has increased, especially since COVID, right? The awareness of, hey, I've got a problem, and the normalizing of it's okay to talk about it has improved significantly since COVID. That said, I think there's still a little bit of a stigma when it comes to men around mental health, because one of the things that I know we've talked about in-house a bit, and we'll talk about it here in this discussion today, is about how sometimes, because of the way that men and women are brought up to talk about things, that even the expectations of what's going to happen in therapy are very different, or they come in with a certain framework and understanding because of what men have been told has been safe or is okay, or in terms of how to approach a situation. And sometimes that's helpful for therapy. And then sometimes that makes it a little challenging for therapy and creates a little bit of some different dynamics that, as therapists, we have the responsibility to be aware of and to try to help folks to work through, help men to work through the things that are going to be necessary for the improvements that they really want to see. And at the end of the day, it's when we all learn how to adapt and how to adjust and to stretch ourselves to grow, that we develop the skills that are going to help us, but then also help us across relationships with other people. Because that's the part too that I think that we miss in general when we are very stuck and rigid on how we approach things, is we miss our ability to connect with other people, because
Yeah.
this is my safe space.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
For
think that
sure.
in ways, and I'm gonna say this last part, then I'll be quiet, but in a lot of ways, some of the ways that men have been socialized keep men in the spaces where they are that they really don't want to be,
Mhm.
because men have been trained to, this is generally speaking, right, to not talk about things, or they don't talk about things the way that women talk about things. And a lot of women will come in and tell your whole life story, like the right here are all the things. And it's a different kind of work. Now, that's not all women, because sometimes, like folks come in and everybody's guarded, people have experienced traumas or whatever. But it can be a little bit harder to dig in
Yeah.
when
Mhm.
there's when it's a male.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they still
agreed.
get the message that they can't be vulnerable, I think, from
Yeah.
society. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I've
Mhm.
noticed too, when I have male clients that come in, it's typically because something big has happened. With the younger clients, I would say
Mhm.
I'm starting to see a difference, but usually something big at work or in a relationship to get them to come in and talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm here because my wife said, my
Yeah.
girlfriend said.
Yeah.
Yes. My wife suggested, right. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, and men still are under that whole assumption that talking about feelings being vulnerable equals in some way, shape, or form weakness. And you don't, in male culture, you don't show weakness, and you definitely don't show weakness to women folk because you can't be weak in front of women. You just not, and that's just the guy rule. You're not supposed to do that. So going in to any kind of medical thing, whether that's us as counselors or your doctor or something like that, does make a man have to, in some way, shape, or form, say something is wrong, and if something's wrong, I am not invincible, therefore I'm weak. And that's usually what keeps them from coming
Yeah.
to us,
Yeah.
is that weakness thing. It is just so hardwired into that of that
Yes.
being showing weakness, and then in their experience when they show weakness, they have been hurt, attacked, traumatized in some way, shape, or form. They've opened up to somebody, and then they've used that thing that they've opened up about in it. Like usually it's like a conflict, and that thing that they talked about comes up in the conflict. And they're
Yeah,
like,
for
heck
sure.
no, I'm never talking about this ever again.
Yeah. It's used
So
against them is
yeah,
what I hear. Yeah.
yeah.
And what I've seen too, I believe that some men feel more comfortable when they do come to therapy, working with a female
Hmm.
therapist because they may feel a little more comfortable being vulnerable as
Yeah,
far versus a male where they may
yeah,
feel like they have to be a little stronger and not be able
definitely.
to cry or, and I
Yeah,
don't know if that's true across the board. I'm sure it's, but, I just can see that being a part of it too, where they can be more vulnerable.
yeah.
Some of them feel like they could be more vulnerable with a female therapist
When I think,
because we're more new, thought to be more nurturing, some
Yeah.
of us.
yeah, and that is true
Yes.
because um, men in general, and maybe this isn't wide known, we're very approval seeking from the women in our lives. And we want to seek that validation that we're doing a good job as a man, father, all of our various roles, worker, provider, those kinds of things. So I could see a guy coming into a female therapist and being able to, if a lot of his wounding's coming from his female relationships, to be able to work on healing inside of a male-female, very healthy therapeutic relationship, to be able to get some of that validation, if you will, or confirmation that he matters from
So
a
it's
female.
interesting to hear you say that.
Hmm.
Because if we look at the like how men get to therapy, it's usually the woman, like we women usually are like, but he's not opening up to me,
No, of
right?
course not. He
But
doesn't
here
trust her.
but here's the thing.
Hmm.
But if you're seeking validation, it's gonna come with the opening up.
No,
Exactly.
no, not really. Not really.
Oh, but it
Not if
does.
it's an unhealthy
Well,
relationship,
if
it's
it's an
not.
unhealthy
Yeah, yeah.
relationship,
Hmm.
no. But if it is a healthy relationship and it's one that's actually safe, because
Yeah.
part of what I see happening is it's a safe relationship, but I have not registered relationships as being safe to be vulnerable. So
Hmm.
until I
Yeah,
get and learn and trust that this one is safe for me, then I just don't open up. But
that's
then when I
Yep.
true.
realize that it's
That's very
safe,
true.
but
Yep.
here's what I also know what happens sometimes, because I see this all the time, because I also work with couples,
Yeah.
is it becomes unsafe because men are resistant to vulnerability. So then I see the women getting so frustrated with the lack of vulnerability and opening up and having to guess all the time about what's going on and what's not going on, that then it becomes unsafe because now that nurturing piece has turned into
Yeah.
frustration and anger, and now
Yes.
they coming for you.
Right. Right. That's why
So
I feel like the beginning of therapy with male clients feels more like coaching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't mind that, especially in the beginning, because if I am nurturing right, if they're starting to trust me, and then it's safer for them to come in with, okay, here's my problem, right? What's the game plan? Here's this, what's the game plan? Let's deal with that, because then that's like less vulnerable, I guess. And
Mhm.
then hoping that, okay, eventually, yes, we're still going to work on that, but let's kind of start talking about you too, you
Mm.
know, and then we can really start getting away from that without even really saying it, you know.
Yeah.
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 So like
One, the other
starting
thing
in that.
is that you want to be safe, but also an environment of respecting them, their thoughts, and their experiences without, because we as men do a lot of things that women don't particularly enjoy or like. So like competitiveness and these kinds of things. But those emotions, while annoying and not so fun for folks to hear sometimes, are valid experiences that we have to go, okay, I hear you're doing that. You're not a horrible, despicable creature for having those emotions. And if you can get to those like spaces, that builds that respect and the safety and the trust. Because yeah, you're right. When you
Mm.
get a guy in the room, you have to build that
Yeah.
fortress of trust before
Mhm.
he's ever going to speak to you.
And
Um,
I
Go
will
ahead.
say that I commend men who continue to show up even though I know it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, me
Mhm.
too.
They
I do
just
too.
keep
Yes,
coming week
yes,
after week after
yes.
week after
I
week
love it.
after week after week after week.
I love it
Because
too.
and for me, when I see that happening, even though I know it's a struggle, I'm like, on some level, you need to be here. And it may
Yeah.
be hard to dig in and go into the work, but you need to be here. And I will respect and honor the fact that you keep showing up, because to me, as a provider, that's an indication that you're at least trying
Yeah.
to get, if we can get a little bit of progress, right? So I look for what I call incremental growth. Like, as long as you moving just a little bit and inching your way along, I feel encouraged about that. And that said, I know a lot of times, especially when progress might be a little slower than what we're used to in therapy. And granted, that's relative, right? Because the progress
Mm.
happens at different rates with different people.
Mhm.
But when it seems like the increments are really small, it becomes really important to then encourage that person and to point out the incremental growth, because
That's right.
I've learned that a lot of people don't see the growth that is actually happening, and
Yeah.
so sometimes, well, I remember talking to a male client and he told me he was used to, and I think this goes back to something you said, Benjamin. He was used to coming, and he thought you just go to therapy when you have problems. And so
Yeah.
one day he was like, here's what I have realized. We're going to process, meaning with me, he's like, you're going to have us to process everything. Like, if it goes wrong, we're going to process it. If it goes right, we're going to process. And
Yeah.
sometimes we spend 45 minutes processing this situation that went really well and dissecting every single thing that he did that he previously would have done in a different way and landed him a different result. And he's like, I didn't realize I did all of that. Yes,
Mhm,
you're
mhm.
learning the skills,
Right.
and you got an
You
amazing outcome that's better for everybody.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
opened up the hood of the car and looked around and see what was not working correctly and replaced some parts and
That's
figured it
it.
out. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
I
it.
and
think one of the big things about like when I talk to guys, I'll say this. Okay, we don't have to be like the Lifetime channel or things and have this huge level of emotional outbursts. We can honor the fact that you're a dude and you can process in smaller sentences. It can be very efficient, but we have
yeah,
to process it. You
Mhm.
yeah,
can't just stick in there and stay. So we're not asking, a lot of times men think I'm asking them to be a woman or a female like person, but
mhm.
I'm actually trying to get them to honor their, because men do talk. I am in a small group where we talk together deep, deep, and we cry together, we laugh together, we trust each other. So we
Yeah.
do it. We just don't do it like women folk do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay, and it has to
Yes.
be okay. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
That
if you,
needs to be respected. That's
yeah,
part of what you're talking about, because that's
yeah,
Yeah.
just as powerful.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think along those lines, one of the things that I do as well is that I think is really helpful, and I tend to see a lot of emotional reaction from men, is recognizing that because men are socialized differently, they don't always have the same language for feelings that women have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so when you see the feeling, naming the feeling, sharing the experience, because sometimes I've seen like men have a hard time articulating what's actually happening. So
Yeah.
I normalize that for them and I say, that's okay, just give me what you got. I'll put the pieces together. And
Yeah.
so then when I put the pieces together and I give it back to them, it's like, oh my gosh, yes, you understand, right? Or
Yeah.
sometimes if we're in a joint session, like with their significant other, I refer to myself as a translator.
Mm.
And I'm like, I'm going to translate what
Yeah.
he just said to you and what you just said to her. So, like, he might say the things, and then I'll say whatever it is, and I'll say, is that what you said? And he's like, yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. And I'm like,
Yes.
and she got it too this time because she didn't know what the heck he was talking about. And then helping them to learn those skills so that they
Yeah.
can speak the same language outside of the therapy session.
Yeah.
And I think it's important too, like you said, Dr. Brooks, as far as when you see those small incremental changes or those, I call them wins and successes and victories, and like we celebrate those. So, and pointing that out to them, I can tell like it feels good. It sparks something in them because sometimes those small growths you don't see when you have a lot going on in your life, but be able to like, hey, you're changing and this is, you did this well, and look at this, and actually pointing it out, it goes a long way. And I know that some of the males that I've worked with, that they have challenges kind of putting words to their feelings.
Yeah.
I have like a feeling chart, you know, that feeling chart, and I keep that in the office. And sometimes you can feel a certain way, but don't have a word for it. And
Mhm.
when they can actually look at a particular word, I'm like, yes, that's what I mean. Or sometimes the word may not even be on the chart, but it brings up a thought like, oh no, this word. And it helps them to identify feeling with that. So
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And another thing too with men, I feel like when some that are in dating relationships, when they begin to open up to the person that they're with, that's huge because sometimes they won't open up if they know that it's not a safe space. So I think that's huge, and it's important how the woman stewards that information too when they share
Mhm.
something.
Agreed.
So
When
that brings up,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say, connecting with what Jill was saying is a lot of times men's only acceptable emotion that they're supposed to feel is anger.
Anger.
Yes.
You feel if I feel sad, I feel angry. If I feel pain, well, I'll feel shame first because I just showed weakness, and then I'm angry about it. So they have that like one word. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. But they'll skip over like pain, sadness. We don't give them like our young boys. Maybe that's changing a little these days, but we don't give like when my daughter has feelings, I have 5, 6 different words I can use for those things, and I'm going through those with her. She has a vocabulary. Um, boys, I don't know that we do that a lot of times as we're what are you feeling? And he's not able to say it. And maybe we just say, okay, just go back and play. We don't give them that vocabulary like you were talking about early on so they can express some of these things, even if it is to other men.
Mhm.
But what were you saying, Dr. Brooks? I had
I
interrupted you
forgot.
there. You did?
I did. I usually write it down and then I didn't in that moment.
Oh,
I don't, it was something that Jill said and it brought something up, but I don't
Was it
remember.
that list of vocabulary for emotions and things?
Was it feeling
or
words?
the being safe when they share their information, when they
It
share their heart
was, it was related to that. Let me think.
or
Being,
stewarding it well.
being safe. No, so this is not what it was, but I
All right.
am gonna say this is there is something to be said about how we define what a safe space is.
Yeah.
Um, and knowing whether or not something is safe, right? And so if you believe that it's safe, then I need to challenge myself to experience safety.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of coming to therapy is if it's not a safe space, ideally your therapist is going to tell you like that's not a safe space, or teaching. Like one of the things that I taught some clients was your feelings are your feelings, period.
Period.
Whether
Mhm.
whether it is quote unquote it fits the situation or not, it's your feeling because it's coming from somewhere, right? Now, if the feeling that I'm having is beyond what somebody would reasonably expect for this situation, then I need to figure out where that's coming from.
Yeah.
But even if it's coming from somewhere else, it's still my feeling. I didn't just make it up.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
therapy is what's going to help you to explore, to find that out. Because here's the part that I think that people miss with feelings is, especially with men, we miss opportunities to get our needs met in relationships when we don't communicate what we feel.
Yep.
Yes.
If
Yep.
you are bothered by something, nobody can help you if you sitting there holding on to it. And you're telling yourself some sort of story about, well, that's because of this, or, maybe they just don't know or understand. No, they don't know or understand. I know I had quite conversations with people before, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, she did this. Well, and she like, well, what are you talking about? Or we talk about perspective sometimes, right? So I was talking to clients, and it was interesting because this particular day they were dealing with a perspective issue, right? Wife came in with one perspective about a situation, husband came in with another perspective about the same situation, and they were both offended. They were both feeling some type of way. This
Yep.
particular day, the light was out in our lobby. And so I came in and I saw that the light was out. And I decided, I said, okay, the light is out. Let me send a message about the light. And I told my clients, I said, I made an active decision not to assume that somebody else saw the light and just didn't do anything about it. Right. Because I
Yeah.
could have made that assumption and then I would have been upset and had an attitude. And
Mhm.
then it was funny because the client said, I thought it was out. I saw that it was out. Now the husband didn't notice at all, but the wife was like, I saw that it was out and I thought you didn't want to see me in person, that you want to work from home. I thought
Wow.
she was like upset. And she was like, oh, she really don't want to be here. She didn't left the light on. But it was that whole, right? We're everybody's making up a story. And unless you bring your version of the story to the conversation, then we can't get clarity about things, like we
Yeah.
can't get on the
Yeah.
same page.
Yeah. Well, and
And
people are just so like, especially in like couples counseling, like what you're talking about is so conflict avoidant. They think that, oh, I'll get new like newlyweds or premarital folks, and like they're like proud that they've never fought. And then they're 5 minutes with me and I get them to fight, of course, because I want to see what they're doing so they have the skills. But we have this idea that conflict just in general is, especially for guys, conflict is usually threatening. We get hurt, punched, or smacked or something like that if we have a conflict with a dude. Well, sometimes our girlfriends too. That can happen as well. But that's supposed to be some sort of a dangerous thing, versus what you're talking about is speaking up so that your ideas and thoughts are known. And it creates that culture of interchange where conflict's not dangerous, it is information gathering and
Yes.
transformational.
Mhm.
Which that's a
And
hard thing to teach people.
yes. Because
Yeah.
I would add to that, I would say conflict and emotions, right? Are not like when we delve into it, it's not going to be so out of control. It actually could feel, more in
Yeah,
control.
yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. And being able
Mhm.
to give men some vocabulary around, they feel when something happens like disrespectful to them, they feel angry immediately, but they miss the 3 or 4 probably other emotions that were just skipped over
yeah.
because
Or-
they're not allowed to feel those.
And what about the times when, because I've seen this happen, like you feel disrespected, but it was just a misunderstanding,
Right?
right? And now you feeling disrespected for I've seen it happen a whole month.
Yeah.
You just mad and upset and you're not saying anything, as if your feeling significant other can't feel the passive aggressiveness in the room.
Feel the stonewalling that is just
Right.
happening.
Punishing with silence.
Right. So then
Yes.
part of it is we have to learn to reframe some of the language that we're using to talk about things, right? So there were two words that came up that stood out for me that in this conversation.
Mhm.
One was conflict and the other was weakness,
Mhm.
right? How about we shift from conflict to conversation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like if we learn how to have a conversation, then it doesn't have to necessarily be conflict. And if conversation and talking about all the things is our norm, then it's not conflict. And I don't have to feel nervous about saying that. Or even if I do feel nervous, guess what? I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Because I sometimes what I teach people to say is just name the feeling up front. Tell your significant other, I feel nervous to talk about this, but I'm gonna do it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's what that does.
Yeah.
It deflates the conversation.
Yes.
They're not coming out the gate, right? Because you just didn't put some vulnerability out there. And
Mhm.
if they truly love and care about you, they're not going to want to pounce on that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and sometimes using the soft startups versus the harsh startup. Because when you start off with you should, you didn't, you never, you did. That's
You.
the other
Yes.
person is gonna become
They
defensive.
like, what?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
Yeah. I told one person, I said, let me just tell you right now, and I said this in front of the spouse. He will never win a conversation with. He will never win in an argument with you ever.
Correct. Yeah.
Ever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ever.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you're too good at it.
Yes, right.
Mhm.
You can't do that. You cannot. And it took a couple months. And then finally she was like, you're right. Like he's like in her mind, he just don't want to go there. No, he
Okay.
can't.
No.
He can't.
Yeah.
No.
And that's
he can't.
okay that he can't, because that's y'all gonna beat and toe up the whole house if he could.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, you just know, and you have to, know exactly how this is gonna end. You need to not, sometimes I say, I don't want that for you.
Yeah.
I know how this is gonna go if we enter this in a conflict, argumentative space. It is not gonna end well for you. And
Yeah.
that is not what I want for somebody that I have love, care, and concern about. So
Right.
press pause on me and learn how to regulate that, right? And here's the
Mhm.
thing, it's only when men are able to say, this is hurtful to me,
Mhm.
that then it causes somebody who loves you, who is imparting that hurt, to then look at themselves.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
Yep.
They need to, sometimes you need to hear the feeling. Don't just be like, well, don't do that. Well, they like, look, put your gloves on. Let's have at it.
Right. Man up and let's go.
Right? Let's do it. But when you say, okay, that hurts, then it's like, oh, I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for in relationships and for some men that when it's hard for them to express their feelings too, talking in pictures helps. Like I envision this when I come home. I want to be able to hug you or, putting some picture to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that will help them become more comfortable with speaking and learning to express their feelings and just say what they want if they're not good with expressing the actual words, but talking pictures. And
Yeah.
then that way you both have the same picture,
Yeah. Well, and something
Mhm.
that's so interesting with the conflict picture that you were talking about, Dr. Brooks, is the fact that women and men's brains, I know this is unpopular, but they work differently. For women folk, their usual experience that I ask them about is, okay, do you have thoughts about past, present, future, multiple thoughts all at the same time, all the time? And then I'll ask the guys, do you have like multiple? And they're like, I got like two. He's got like two channels usually that he
Yes.
can go from. So one of them
Wow.
in conflicts on the conflict, And then the second channel is usually, how do I fix this and how is it my fault? And then, like you talked
Yeah.
about that other gal that she's got multiple things of, not only is she in the conflict, she can be having windows to support her conflict, and she's got a whole section of windows that are going, you go, girl, you get it, we're doing it. They're like a cheering section. So in conflicts, there's no way that a guy will ever win. And it doesn't mean he's any less intelligent. I don't
Right.
care if
It's
he's
not
got
in
5
like
college degrees.
yeah.
He is going to lose if the point is to win those things versus
Exactly.
compromise.
If the
Yes.
point is to win, right? The
Yeah.
point can't be to win. It has to
Can't
be
be
to be
to
on the
win.
same page.
Yeah.
That has
Yeah.
to be the goal. And to your point about men and women's brains working differently, here's the question that I would ask a man who is feeling like I can't share. How is anybody going to know?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't say it out loud, how do sometimes I say this as a psychologist. I am a psychologist, not a psychic.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see some things that you can't see, but I'm still not a psychic. And even if I feel like I see something, my goal is still to get you to say it out loud.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
And,
still the goal.
and talk in pictures if you have
Yeah.
to. Envision,
Well,
talk
yeah,
about what
definitely.
you
Or
see.
analogies. I use a lot
I
of
mean, I
analogies.
always
Yeah.
like envision for guys. Hey, okay, in like if you're having a struggle with a guy or anything, you, the speaking up is like slaying the dragon. You're taking up that sword, getting your courage out, and saying, you're slaying that dragon that says don't talk, don't speak, don't have any emotion. You just have to and that connects usually. If you can connect a guy to feeling a warrior, someone who's standing up and being powerful and strong. He's like, you can get guys to cry for that. It actually makes me a little welled up because that is at the heart of good men.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of bad, stinky, weak old men out there too, but good men want to rise up. And if you can connect that in some way, shape, or form to connect with the person they're with, or connect with the fact that they need to actually, go to the doctor and check out things that they need to do to be healthier for their family. You are on the road to healing if you can make some of those connections and really connect with the heart of a man. Because there are so many
Yeah.
good men out there. They really are.
So two thoughts that I want to leave with as we wrap up, kind of related to what you really just talked about is, and what I've seen in therapy. There are times when I've encountered men who are having things going on for them and they don't share. And I've had men to come in and I'm their therapist and they shared something with me years later, and I'm like looking at them. And then I remember asking somebody like, did I know that? Because I know I asked a specific question about that.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, you didn't know.
He just didn't share it.
Right. But here's the thing. Had he shared, it would have given me so much more perspective and understanding about it, about what was happening and the level of depth about what was happening. Right. We could have made some different kinds of progress.
Yeah.
Had I known. And I see this happening also, when men are needing to say something to their significant other and maybe they don't have the words yet, or they're still working on it,
Yeah.
is if you know in your mind, even if your emotions aren't there yet, if you know in your mind that this is a safe space, at least plant a seed. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll say to men, if you just had a reaction about something and you feel like you're going to need to talk about it, but you're not ready to talk about it yet, just say, okay, I'm having a feeling. Let me figure that out. But then I want to come back to this at some point. At least let them know, because there's sometimes where the other person thinks that the conversation is over. And then now 2 days later, you rolling back and they like, well, you've been lying to me for 2 days.
Right.
Right? Because they thought
Yeah.
you had moved on. So I'm like, look, at least just acknowledge that it's in the room, and then they can kind of navigate that how they want to. And ideally, in a healthy relationship, they'll give you space to be ready to talk about it, when you're ready. But also, I want to transfer that over to therapy too. It's tell your therapist, there's something there, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
Yeah,
And at
so
least
true.
they know and they can
Mhm.
keep it in their mind. And then if we feel like there's a potential that whatever this thing is in this category could be related, we can at least ask about it
Yeah.
or prompt about it versus you just having to hold it by yourself. Because sometimes putting it out there just a little bit is all that you need to start to feel okay with saying it. Because we've all had clients who come in and they've said to us in the first session, I have never said this out loud to another person.
Yep.
You know,
So
or
true.
I've had clients to say, I'm not ready to talk about this yet, but I'm gonna put it right here and then we'll move on for
Yeah.
something else. You
Yeah.
know, but that's okay. At least let them know that it's there so that somebody else can hold space for you in that area.
Yeah, very true. I think just the last point for me is when we have men in the room as therapists, don't assume that you have a shallow pond emotionally in front of you. Assume that there is that depth underneath, because it's what is the old saying? Still water is deep.
Run
Run
deep.
Still waters
deep.
run deep.
Deep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's what you usually have with most guys that
Yeah.
are pretending to be stoic,
Yeah.
and that's just their surface mask.
Yep.
And underneath there's thoughts and emotions and a turmoil and a storm a lot of times that they are waiting to share with you. They just don't know that they can or not.
And know we coming for
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
them. We are
Exactly.
coming for them. And we know they there. And you know that we know they there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I'm excited too, because I'm seeing more and more men come to therapy. And I'm excited because they're getting their healing. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Agreed. It was a good discussion today.
Yeah.
I think we're actually at the end of our time, but folks, if you're in the chat or if you're watching this video, please comment below and just give us some ideas and thoughts as what you see as some of the primary needs of men and their health. See how you might be able to find special ways to connect with them and draw them out and really connect with the hearts of men. I thank everybody here today for hanging out and having such a wonderfully deep discussion about this. I really appreciate it as a man to have people who are passionate and just ready to help guys
Mhm.
to find healing in their lives. So it's a good feels for me too.
Sure.
But yeah,
Mhm.
have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody, and thank you
Mhm.
very much.
Bye.